Okay, hello everyone. Thank you very much for the attendees who have come this afternoon at the webinar. So right now you will meet the expertise from education, gamification, and technology. And now I will let Mas Rizki to continue. Mas Rizki, please.
Looks like I'm still on mute. 2021 and still have like Zoom problem. So thank you everyone for joining this session. Appreciate your time. I know everybody's like super busy, but if you're like me, pretty much passionate with this topic. I myself is a parent. I have a son, 10 years old. 11 years old. And I myself is also grew up as a gamer. So this is actually a pretty interesting topic. So maybe let me introduce our panelists first. So we have Robbert here from Titik Pintar. And we have Ellis. She has a pretty interesting book. She write basically a very I think should translate to Indonesian language pretty much soon. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that, and of course probably our rockstar Mr. Wempy. So maybe first, Robert, can you give an introduction first about what you do, who you are, and what you do?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much, Rizki. And very nice to be here. And indeed, also very passionate about education. And that's also why I'm here in this panel, and especially also in Indonesia, because I founded Titik Pintar, and Titik Pintar is a company, and we are aiming at it's an edtech, education and technology, and we're creating a curriculum for kids, for elementary school kids, that is as attractive as possible. And we think if learning is fun, kids will learn a lot more and a lot better actually, and that's why we are creating this. So trying to make games be used in education. So that's why it's very interesting to be part of this panel. We started 2 years ago, and we're still learning a lot, but we are heading in the right direction with it. That's it.
Cool. Thanks, Robert. What about you, Alice? I understand you have a book, Main untuk Menang, right? And you also work as a coach. So maybe can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yes, hello. Well, I'm in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam right now, and I have been visiting Indonesia with Wempy last year, or actually, yeah, just before Corona. Actually, we have been traveling around to talk about education in Indonesia. I wrote the book Apply Play to get ahead of the game in English. It's translated in 3 languages now, and it's being translated into more actually, which makes me very proud. I'm the designer from origin, and I designed signage and websites and interaction design. And it's in 1999 that my client asked me about a children website for global citizenship, an educational website. They said, how can we engage our customers more with what we want to, with the message we want to convey? And then we said, maybe we should make them play around with the content on the website. And we started developing games since then, educational games, and we got involved in behavior change games. And in these, so 1999, it's more over 20 years ago, I also started to do research to see why do games engage so much, and why are they like a perpetual mobile in motivation. Once you are playing, you love to learn. You get sort of addicted to learning, and not only to addicted to play. And I think that's crucial in play, but also in education. How can we make our pupils, our students, owner of the content that they need to learn, or they want to learn even more? That's why I love to look at games, and I wrote this book sort of get the message across that it's not just about playing a game, but there's so much in there. Thank you.
Nice, really interesting, especially with how you transition from designer and everything. So we'll get back to that again later. And I think now it's Wempy. I think always feels like so close to Wempy, so I'll call him in a first name basis. So Wempy Dyocta Koto, I know him from several startups in Indonesia. And he's also an author, a book author as well, Kelas Dunia or World Class. So maybe Wempy, can you introduce yourself a little bit?
You are muted.
Mute.
Oh, okay, that's a good start. Okay, hi Rizki, and thank you for the introduction, as well as Robbert and Ellis. Thank you for inviting me on this call. My name is Wempy Dyocta Koto, and I work as an investor as well as an entrepreneur. I have a range of different products that have been launched around the Indonesian market, from food through to furniture, fashion, and a range of different companies, including a publishing arm, as well as I'm launching a recording company, a music recording company, very soon. As part of our publishing company, we are the publishers for Ellis Bartholomeus' book called Apply Play to Win Ahead of the Game. So, which is a bit of a mouthful. So we've translated it to Main untuk Menang in Bahasa Indonesia. So we originally Ellis came to Indonesia approximately about September, October, November. 1.5 years or so ago, just right before COVID. So we were going to launch it literally a few weeks in, and then COVID happened. It was just in the inappropriate time to launch a book like that, just during the whole sort of global crisis. And so I have a huge interest in games, and this is why we've decided to launch the book in Indonesia and become the official publisher of the book. And the reason why I'm interested in games in particular is because of the educational factor of that. You and I, we purchase phones almost every year or 2 years. Yeah? We upgrade from one iPhone or one Samsung or whatever sort of product phone that we use. We always upgrade that all the time. But we view education as something very static. Oh, it's got to be traditional. We've got to educate kids in the same way that we educate kids 100 years ago or 200 years ago or 300 years ago. And there's no evolution to that. And that's where I think it's wrong. Technology forces us to upgrade our hardware. Now we need to upgrade the software and how we teach kids. And so to me, this is going to be a vital and important webinar for all of us. I'm going to be contributing in as much as I'm going to be learning. And so I think when it comes to education, games, the word game and the word play has a lot of negative connotations, right? When we think of games and play, we think of children playing, and it's something that we are very adverse to. And parents often discourage that. But I think in this call, we're going to realize why we need to encourage games, why we need to encourage play, and how it can become a catalyst for education. And not just at children's level, right? It's not just kids who are 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, or 10, 12 years old, but also at university level and beyond throughout our whole sort of adulthood and life. So yeah, so that's my involvement in the whole project and campaign.
Got it. Thank you, Wempy. Really excited to have you here. And I think kind of like probably like if I can like drew a red line like between all of our 3 panelists here, like all of us are interested, pretty much passion in education, right? But there's one big how do I say, a theme is that Robert, your approach to education is to via games, and of course, Ellis, you also via applied play, right? So maybe let's go back to you first, Robert. Why do you think games can be used in education, right? How do you come to that sort of conclusion, though?
Yeah, so it's I hadn't read the book of Ellis before, because otherwise I would have come up with this a bit earlier, I suppose. But sometimes these ideas need to mature a bit as well. Now I started. I strongly believe that that kids they learn best when they're having fun, and I think gamification is an engagement mechanism, and just like Wempy said. I'm focusing on the elementary school, but there's definitely a lot of use and a lot of possibilities for gamification as an engagement mechanism for pretty much anything. Whether it's to make something more interesting, whether it's to make something more memorable by having fun. I do believe your all the different hormones in your brain and your brain firing at the same time, all these different parts. It really helps you learn and progress. So I think that's what I was really interesting to do something in education. I wanted to do an impact business. I'm from the Netherlands. In the Netherlands, there's a company called Suluh, and they are quite successful in this type of software. Also in other countries, in India, you've got Byju's, for instance. Here in Indonesia, you've got Ruangguru, Zenius, a few other companies which are very, very interesting and paving the way for edtech and education in Indonesia. But there wasn't a company that really focused on this specific niche that Titik Pintar is focusing on the elementary school. And I think gamification is extremely suited for elementary school education. So if you can make this a success, I'll be happy to try to make it a success for later ages as well. But let's start with this early age.
Thank you, Robert. Now, I just trying to comment on. I think going to give you a easy pass today, Robert. You don't have to read Ellis' books right now because Ellis is here to explain to you. I think Robert very clearly said that, and I do agree that kids learn best when they're feeling happy, right? Do you agree with that, Ellis?
Yes, I totally agree, because yeah, if you're motivated, you're intrinsically motivated, you do a task without even questioning why you're doing that task, or there's no obstacle. So, but if you're extrinsically motivated because your teacher tells you to do those sums or to learn those words, you don't really immerse in the activity, but you also don't really the learnings don't go deep inside. But as long as you're playing around with your skills or your knowledge, you really have deeper learning. And what's also best, if you do it in a playful activity, you get an attitude towards the things you learn and the skills, and that makes you very capable to apply those skills or the knowledge in very different situations. So not only, for instance, when I got education when I was young, we were told to learn German words, like all these words, and you just put them in your head. So you do the exam, so you know all these words, but next day you'll forget about them. And so that's not efficient learning, but I did get my grade, so I'm done with that. But how to make sure that you know a language is talking to someone, and failing talking to someone, not understanding someone, makes you want to learn. And one great example, actually, in these recent 20 years, what happened a lot is that many young children at a very young age learned English just because they were chatting over while playing a game internationally. And they just found out if they want to talk to the other player, they have to learn English. And they did. They did before they learned English at school. So that's why I think if there's a good motivation other than someone else telling you, but it's an intrinsic motivation, then you learn much faster, better, deeper, and play is really a very good tool for that.
That's a pretty interesting perspective, and I do agree. But because I think basically like all of us like to start our conversation on this topic. It's like when I was young, we were told to do this, right? So that's an interesting perspective from a coach or educator. But like the old and the new way, right? I think the correct probably like the term is gamification. How do you see the challenge in like introducing this gamification and to apply this in education?
The question was to me?
To Ellis, yeah, to you.
Yeah, okay, sorry, thank you. In many ways, I am applying it in many ways, because it's not only about making people play, because that is a game, to make people play a game, but gamification is how can we apply elements from games in the real world. And so those things can be motivational, like awards or status or scores, leaderboards. All these things you can apply, and you can motivate in your class, making students win awards. But then it's also very important to have a great diversity in what awards. So it's not only being the best, but being the most original, being the most funny, being the most creative. You can find out scores and awards and motivational aspects that fit like a glove for every student in your class. And it's also, for instance, for one student who might be ahead of the game, ahead of the class, who's like the very clever person, you might encourage that person to make him coach someone who's behind. So you as a teacher might not be trying to motivate the one who's feeling bored, and you're trying to motivate the one who's frustrated because he's behind, but you can juggle around within the class with the skills and competencies there to make them pass the class together and motivate them all on different ways. So there's social ways and competency levels, and all these things are related to different scientific theories, which I don't want to bother you with, but social aspect is also crucial. So to tap into those potential motivational areas which come from gamification, but are also just about self-determination theory. How do you progress in life as an individual, and how do you relate to your classmates, to your teacher, to your school, to your family with all these skills? So that's very interesting.
Thank you. Before we go to Wempy, right? Because I want to connect all of those interesting statements. Just a quick reminder to our participants that you can just ask questions directly or comments, either in the chat to the panelists or directed to me, or maybe Carlina can also help collect the question. Now, Wempy, I know. Seeing that you have a pretty global background, you know, like a entrepreneur, educator, etc. And we heard like the then and now situation from Ellis, right? And Robert's perspective on like, for example, applying games to make kids happy in educating. And you mentioned earlier that about 1.5 years ago, there's this thing, this small things called COVID that happens, and now everybody seems to be learning remotely, right? You see this as a challenge, and can we still like do this whole interaction, educating with people from a remote, right? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a very good question, actually, because you're asking about the here and now. Can gamification be effective in a forum that is not face-to-face anymore between teacher and student?
Yeah.
when there is a screen there? And the answer is yes. Absolutely yes. Let me just and let me go back to the fundamentals of this whole subject of play and gamification. What we're discussing right now is highly pioneering. It's very ahead of the curve, to the point where some people would say that we're crazy. For us, this might be a norm, but for many people, they're like, play games, educational, is it of benefit? Oh, you're wasting your time. These people are crazy, or these people are even stupid, for example. But let me go back and relate this to the fundamentals of being a human being. What drives progress in our world is curiosity. There can be no progress without curiosity. And it is curiosity that we need to harness in every single person. So when we talk about children, it's about harnessing curiosity in children. When we talk about harnessing curiosity in adults, right? Or when we talk about progress in adults, it's also through curiosity. Now, but how can curiosity be harnessed? It can only be harnessed through incentivization. Kids can be encouraged to be curious through incentivizing them. For example, right? Okay, how did we incentivize kids before? Oh, you can get 100% in that exam, or 90%, or an A plus, or a B plus, or a C plus, whatever, right? So that's how we used to incentivize children and even adults at university. But we realized that not all kids and not all adults can be incentivized in that sort of academic format. It works for some people like myself, for example, where I was able to score very high marks at university or at school, but it may not work for other people because our brains all wired very differently. There are some people who are incentivized because they want to help others. There are some people who are incentivized because they may get chocolate by the end of that. There are some people who are incentivized because they may get points after that, right? And there are some people who are incentivized just simply because they feel that it's their responsibility. But it's a matter of creating these different incentives for people that align with what their values are, what they have been told that's important to them. And so progress is only possible through incentivization, right? And incentivization can only be harnessed, right, when you align the right incentives for that particular person. When you're doing it face to face, right, or when you're scoring people, right, okay, you can get 100 for that, or you can get B plus or C minus, whatever. That can actually be an incentive, or that can actually be a disincentive. I remember when what happened for me when I was at school in Indonesia, when I was at high school, right? I had always achieved very, very high marks. I had come first in the class, second. I was actually really sad whenever I came third, whatever in the class, right? And so I always got really good marks at school. But I remember one time my family moved over, sorry, didn't move over. We went on a holiday to Indonesia. And and my parents allowed me to extend my holiday in Indonesia for a few extra weeks, right? And those extra weeks, when I returned back to Australia, and the kids in my school had already commenced school already, had set me back, right? Because they had already progressed into, algebra or whatever it was, calculus or whatever it was at that stage, right? And I was already behind the times of that. And so them getting marked and graded and coming first, etc., actually became a disincentive for me, because I moved from coming first in the class to coming third in the class to now coming 30th or so in the class, like really behind. I should have been pushed to the other class. And so we all need different incentives at different stages of our lives. And so it's a matter of that whole process of incentivization, and the next part of the evolution of education, which is customization. right? And that's something that's on a completely different level. Because when we talk about education, we talk about mass education, where, okay, the whole education system is going to be changed. And this is how it's going to be for everybody now during COVID, right? It's going to be face-to-face. It's going to be, one teacher and 30 kids and all different little boxes of screens for everybody, right? But the challenge for the future is not only gamification or play of education, but customization. And those elements of games need to be customized for every single student. So we all have a fair opportunity to learn, because the way that my brain is wired is completely different to the way Ellis's brain is wired, or yours, Rizki. And so, and Robert's also. And so how I thrive is completely different to how Ellis is going to thrive, is completely different to how Rizki is going to thrive. It's not fair if an education system is only tailored to the Wempys of the world. That's completely unfair, and it's not right. It needs to also be tailored to the Ellises of the world, to Rizkis of the world, to the Roberts of the world. And there are other kids also who are who are geniuses, who are academic genius, who are very advanced. They need to be tailored, gamified and tailored for them also, as well as kids who are, who might be more attuned to sports, who might be attuned to more, and Ellis used a really good example of learning languages. And I, like we talk about children a lot here. We've been talking, the word children has been bandied around a lot. But the fact is that the way children learn is pretty much the same as the way adults learn. We only learn because we are curious. And that's why the digital era has really proven the importance of curiosity, because the algorithms keep on giving us what we want. That happens at YouTube, that happens at Google, that happens on every level. And that these algorithms that we're seeing, for example, when I search, for example, right, if you go through my YouTube or Google searches, a lot of that has to do, for example, with Ramadan, because I'm trying to learn a lot about Ramadan right now, and all the things that I have to do to become a better Muslim, for example. And so a lot of what I'm being served right now has got to do with what I'm curious about. And so that curiosity leads me into a rabbit hole. And a person who's interested in fashion, right, that's going to lead them into another rabbit hole of like fashion, Vogue, Anna Wintour, that sort of stuff, etc. And so basically what I'm saying is that education, gamification, customization. COVID also.
Can I respond to that, please?
Yes, please. I think just get hitting up.
Yeah, it's true. Wempy, you're so very right, and it's very nice what you say, customization. But it's indeed games. We design games to be adaptive, so they fit certain players, and we design indeed algorithms to make sure that if one player is very good at something, we make them jump to a much higher level, and if they fail there, we just guide them a little bit back, without making them know that they are guided backwards. So they feel they're always progressing, but the game system is always trying to adapt, like what is, in what state is my player in, and how can I keep him engaged, not making it too hard, but not making it boring. And that's indeed adaptive. And that's also the algorithms you mentioned, Wempy. But it's so nice you said, so you're guided into the rabbit hole. I also love the name Rabbit Hole, of course, being Alice in Wonderland as my company name. But it's so nice. Also, the discussion nowadays is very much that people feel that they are being taken towards a direction by the algorithms of Google, instead of feeling that they are driving the wheel and they are in control of these algorithms. And that is a very interesting discussion as well. Like how are we taking our users, our players, our students by the hand and guiding them or assisting them or enabling them on their own path? and making them drive their own direction and be in control of their learning path? Or how are we pushing people? And that ethical dilemma, I think, is very important also in game design, and also for Robbert designing Titik Pintar, is how do you make sure that people feel in control of their own game? Because that is also very important. But I really love the narrative of Wempy.
No, it's the thing is that it's actually very true, because the word education for thousands of years, or for hundreds of years at least, has lost its way, right? Education, right, simply is a means to learning so the human race can progress forward into the future. But what education has become synonymous with is competition. It's always just about competition. It's about me versus you, one kid versus the next, the top students versus the bad students, the guys versus the girls. Who's smart? It's lost its way. It's education equals competition. Then once you start to democratize that, then actually education equals collaboration, right? Which is what Ellis alluded to before. How fun would it have been, for example, for me, if I was in year 6 at school and the teacher said to me, Wempy, you're the top student of the class. For example, I'm just using an example, right? Wempy, you're the top student of the class, right? I'm going to give you a challenge. It's going to be an awesome challenge, right? I want you to help the person who's coming last in the class, right? How do you want to help them? And it could be through games, it could be through collaboration, it could be through, working together. But that aspect of collaboration means that we're all advancing. It means that not one child is left behind. You know that philosophy of not one soldier is left behind that was always used during the Iraq War and Afghanistan War, right? It should be like that at school, that we should not want the child who comes last to just be there. The person at the top should be able to help the person at the bottom, right? And so we can all advance together. But then, yes, as education evolves from education equals competition to education equals collaboration, then it should equal education equals customization and acknowledgement by the governments of all the world, right, that we all learn differently. Our brains are all wired differently. How my brain is wired is no better than how your brain is wired, is no better than how anybody else's brain is wired, because we all have a role to play in this world to advance the world. Because why is it that what they say is that C-grade students are the ones who become entrepreneurs, who are all the ones who build the most amazing startups, build the most amazing companies, that end up hiring all of the A-grade students who went to university, who got their bachelor's and master's degree, who are academically great, right? Because those people who are academics, they end up working for Boston Consulting Group, or for Bain, or for Visa, or for MasterCard, or for Daimler Chrysler, or for these big companies, because they're not brave enough, they're not courageous enough to build their own startups and start from zero. They're not rebels in that sort of sense. And it's always these rebels who rarely became these academic greats that end up building some of the biggest companies around the world, because their brains are wired differently. And so it's important that none of us are ever dismissive. And one very important point that I'd like to mark right now is that I always wondered, and I always hated the military, because I'm an idealist, right? And I hate the fact that we spend billions of dollars every single year on sending people to war, on all these trucks and these submarines and these these spaceships and bombs that bomb people and kill everybody everywhere, right? I literally absolutely hate the military. But it's very true that the greatest technologies have come through from the military, right? A lot of the greatest technologies that we use today for commercial purposes have come from technology that was developed by the military. And so when it comes to games, right, people are thinking, oh God, I hate games. I hate why my kids play on their iPad all the time and playing games on all these different things, right? I would say 30 years ago, when I was playing games like Yi Er Kung Fu on my Amstrad CPC 464, for example, right? A lot of that was a waste of time because I was just like, one character trying to kill the other character, my car trying to beat the other car, and all these different things, right? It was, right? But like everything else, it has evolved. It has evolved to become an important part of our society. And it's a matter of all of us, right? It's a matter of all of us being open to the idea that games can play a pivotal role, right, in creating a new world of education for our children.
Thanks, Wempy. And if I might add to that, so of course the topic is, can games be used in education? Well, I think games always were gamification elements of play have been used in education as far as we can remember, right? It's a very good way for engagement. And like you said, okay, 20, 30 years ago, it was very humble beginnings. I still believe we're still in very rudimentary stage right now. And with Titik Pintar, we're trying to push the envelope, we're trying to explore, we're trying to figure out this balance between purely fun and games and engagement and learning and education. How can we best try to educate kids while making sure that they have a great time, right? And this is something that we are still figuring out. We definitely need to learn a lot. We need to play around a lot with this as well, right? So this is what we're doing, and I think that is something that is very interesting. Like you said about the customization, yes, because the device availability, the personalization is much more possible, right? Especially now also with the COVID, self-paced learning has become important, and I think it will remain very important that kids can be challenged on the way that they can actually proceed at a level that they enjoy, right? And then there's different parts of the of what triggers kids. It can be competition, that's one thing, but it's definitely not only thing, right? It can be nurturing, can be collecting, can be exploring, right? And all these different things which trigger all these different people. If we're able to make a combination of all these different mechanisms with the personalization, with the customization, to make it adaptive for every single kid, that would be something that I'm really excited about, and that I really get out of bed full of energy trying to figure this out. We're not there yet, definitely not, but we are onto something. I can feel
Rizki. Rizki, I think also just in relation to your question about COVID, right?
Yep.
COVID has accelerated a lot of different technology, a lot of ways of thinking that would not have happened had COVID not happened, right? But the very fact is that all these Zoom calls, all these different educational platforms and formats, etc., right, could actually open a lot of different opportunities for people to learn. Because the way that I learn, right, as a child, could actually be the same as how many other children at Finland or at Germany or at Africa or at Brazil, our styles of learning may be different. Whereas a different child may learn different ways, may be connected through other ways, through other people of different geographies or different backgrounds, or different how their brains are wired differently. So we may see an evolution of what that classroom is going to look like. It may not be a class full of people simply because they live in the same area. Because traditionally, or today, right, I go to school because I live in a particular area, all right?
Yep.
And that's the school that I go to, because I live in, because I live at, for example, because I live at Menteng in Jakarta, then I go to school at Menteng. Because I live at Depok, then in Jakarta, then I go to a school at Depok, for example, right? But it may not be like that anymore. It may start to, okay, so kids of a particular, how their brains are wired, if psychology, if technology, if algorithms start to work, like start to decipher and start to categorize the way people will learn differently, right? We can actually start to target the education industry so it can become more effective across geographies, across languages, across these different ways. Because there are some kids who are so awesome at mathematics, and I'm very poor at mathematics, right? That the kids who are awesome at mathematics, they shouldn't be in a classroom with me. Should not. They should be in a classroom with other kids who are awesome at mathematics, so they can accelerate and go faster together. And the world would move faster together. And they should have a lot of their formats gamified. Whereas, somebody like myself who's below average at mathematics, I shouldn't be in that class. You know what I mean? So, this whole screen, COVID, Zoom evolution, it can really start to democratize education, gamification, and advance it a lot further and faster.
Yep. But I think it's really interesting because we covered like a lot of topics like gamification, incentivizing. Sorry, it's always hard. And then like you also mentioned that it's pretty hard to cater to the individual inside this like a global environment like the Wempy of the world, the Ellis of the world, etc. But I think kind of like there should be some way to bridge like to do like all of this personalization, like still following up with the whole general consensus of the education standard, right? And for example, like when I spoke to Robbert earlier, he mentioned that the Titik Pintar app that he built was actually following national curriculum, but student can complete at their own pace, right? So maybe it's something like in between like that, so you don't have to like sit in class like face to face, where when I was a little, like I always get scolded because Rizki, you need to get quiet, Rizki, quit, stop kicking your friends, right? Something like that. So maybe Robbert, can you tell us a little bit more, like why do you think like combining this element like a self-paced learning, but still following the national curriculum is important to you, or what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, so I mean, ultimately, I think it's very. The reason we are aligning with the Indonesian curriculum is because we want to provide value to the education of the kids, and most parents will feel that if it's aligned with what kids learning at school, that kids will get higher grades, that it's effective, and that is true. Of course, there's still a discussion. What are the grades? What do they say? What are you rewarding with these kinds of grades? And is this an ideal situation? No, I think there will be improvements on this. So yes, the content that we're creating is in line with the Indonesian curriculum, but we're going above and beyond that, right? We want to figure out, okay, so how can we make it more engaging? If it means that there's parts from a Cambridge curriculum or from IB or from a curriculum from Vietnam or from India or from the Netherlands or from the Nordics, or any way that kids are acquiring the skills that are useful, yes, then I would love to include this in the curriculum that we are building. So the self-paced learning, I think it's because we have this technology, because it's adaptable, because it's one kid with a device, and we can see the progress, we can help have the kid learn what they can actually proceed in, what they're able to continue in. Like Ellis said, if it's too easy, they get bored. If it's too difficult, they get frustrated. So if we can challenge them on that specific level, they're actually intrinsically motivating. They are progressing, whether it's for the collection or the competition or the nurturing or whatever. Just as long as they're engaged, that is very important. Now, if you make this self-paced, it means that every kid feels special, that every kid is able to feel this reward and to be proud of himself and to continue. And that should make, of course, the parents feel proud as well if we're able to communicate the value of the progress, let's say. So I think having this self-paced learning is very important. Now, we also have a part in our application, the live classes, which is actually a teacher explaining a concept. Children can still ask questions.
Person, right?
Exactly. Because at this point, maybe technology hopefully will proceed, and it might we might get better at the self-paced even better. But at some point, if a child gets stuck, somebody needs to help them unstuck. And I'm very happy to have great teachers that are working with Titik Pintar, creating the content that we need that is excellent. At the same time, even the content that we can create gamified, at some point there might be a question, hey, I don't understand how to multiply with fractions, or what is a square root, and then it's actually a teacher that will always need to help the child a little bit to trace a few steps back and then allow him or her to start proceeding again. Now let's see.
By the way, I think we got some few questions here. Oh, okay. You go first, Ellis. I see you still like the old ways, raising your hands.
Yeah, I'm old-fashioned. No, but I would like to jump on what Robbert was saying, that we want to adapt to certain children to make them self-paced learning. But also I was involved in a project where we use technology to educate children in refugee camps in Uganda. And I could never do user testing because I could never go there to see the children. There was this big chain of people being involved in development, and it was a very difficult process. But I always say, like, we have to develop technology and tools that everyone can foster and embrace. So we need to encourage teachers to use the tools, to understand the tools. We should not exclude the teachers. We should not exclude the family and the parents, and exclude the peers that they. So how to find ways and tools to develop technology or games for everyone to learn their own path, but also be part of a community. But the funny thing is that for Uganda, for instance, we had information coming back when we were making design decisions. And I was still saying, like, but how about the teachers? But then we found out that there was one teacher who had 300 children a day. He was or she was trying to teach math and language to 300 children a day. So then we are very happy that we are able to send over technology, tablets with some solar cellars to be charged, because of course there's no electricity over there. So it's very difficult to design a project like that. Plus, we also have been developing for Arabic language. And we need local developers and artists, because sometimes we think that something is very clear, that we draw, for instance, coins to say, like, okay, so you can learn math by paying something in the shop. But some coins are not familiar in certain countries, or they don't have paper notes, or so it's so crucial not only that we develop technology and we have it globally working, but also to make it local, to make people feel that they understand what they are being taught, that it relates to them, that it's familiar in their direct surroundings. So there are so many complex things to think about, making things adaptive, but also make a good match, because it's not easy to design a game about learning someone in Arabic if you don't talk Arabic yourself. So these things are very, very important. That's why I also would like to encourage a lot more people to learn about designing good education and good games and good technology. and really make it adaptive to the user. Thank you.
Just Ellis, just on that note of Arabic, right? Because you mentioned Arabic, right? So I'm actually in the process of trying to memorize the Quran, right? Like I'm which is Arabic, right? And so the only way that I can do this is through gamification, through just like, so you know, there are various courses and things that I'm studying and all that sort of stuff, right? But like it like I'm learning that, for example, in the Quran there are mainly like 62 words or so that are always just that are repeated constantly all the time, sort of stuff, right? And so the only way that I can put it into my brain is through games, like the games that I play with myself, sort of stuff. But yeah, I mean, like it's the whole sort of everything just now needs to evolve very fast and very rapidly to ensure that that children as well as adults feel comfortable that playing games is a part of the education process. Yep. Because that's one thing that is vital within this whole sort of discussion is the word purpose. When I went to school, I didn't understand what the purpose of was for us to learn about things like chlorophyll, right? Or these things. When we didn't even learn about how to do our taxation returns. So it's like, okay, what's the purpose of learning about this science or this planet, whatever, when we're not even learning about how to do my tax return, how to apply for a job, how to do, fundamental things, right? So if behind all of what we're trying to teach, and behind everything that we're trying to gamify, if we build a purpose behind that, then children will become more comfortable and wanting to learn what they're learning. Adults will become more comfortable in learning what they're learning. So the whole word of purpose in gamification is vital also.
I think that's the word of the day, purpose, because I think that's also why all of us here. And I do agree with you, Wempy. When I was a kid, I just do what my teacher told me. I don't know what's the purpose, even though maybe sometimes down the road, oh, this is something I learned like a few years ago, but I didn't know back then, right? Until it just come to you. But I think it's really great. By the way, I live in Cibubur area in just a suburb of Jakarta, and it's raining here. But great to see that the discussion is heating up. But let me take a look at the question first, and then we can reply to the participants. So first from Luciana, I think this is related to what you mentioned earlier, Wempy. What do you guys think about inclusion through gamification? Is it effective? And then next is from Ipan Ardian. What kind of games can improve children's education and how to keep children from getting bored? So maybe who want to go first here with Luciana's question?
Ellis?
It's okay. You don't have to raise your hand.
Ladies first.
Yeah, I think inclusion is crucial, and actually, what I mentioned just now about how can we help children in refugee camps to become educated, or to get education at all, and we have to find ways of how to get them in the driver's seat of their own learning. What do they need to learn? What do they want to learn? What was also funny is that we built the game. It was a 2-year curriculum on a tablet for children in the age of 8 to 14. And I loved receiving the photos of the school class playing around with the tablet. Like one child sitting there and 8 are looking at him playing the game. So they are learning secondhand by just watching because there were not enough tablets. But also to see that 18-year-old guys were using the tablet to learn how to write and to learn math. And so in that sense, as a designer, I'm in the luxury position that I often tell my clients, like, oh no, 8 to 14 is a way too big range, because children of 8 have a different desire than those of 14. So you have to make it smaller to have a good target audience, to make a good design fitting the target audience. But then I learned that sometimes you can design games. Actually, also we design games for 80 plus people, no, 60 plus for elderly. And while we were doing that, we in our testing phases, we found out that our target audience was playing with their grandchildren. So suddenly we developed a product which matched children of 6 till parents of grandparents of 80. And actually the parents and the mothers in between also loved to play our games, because they said they are so calm, and they are so challenging. And so we designed inclusive in a way without being deliberately all inclusive, because it's very hard to design for everyone. It's actually impossible. But it's but sometimes, and actually I think that what's the game with Angry Birds? Angry Birds is one of the first games that managed to trigger a very wide range of female and male players, but also a wide range of adults. So they created a new market of players and gamers, because they had a very low threshold and they had a very good curiosity trigger in their game. And that's so interesting to be about all inclusive. How can you create something that people want to be on board, and how to make this magnet happen? However, not getting people on board without them being voluntary playing, because the voluntary, they have to want to come, not you getting them to come. That's crucial, I think. So yeah, I think there are great lessons learned in the last 20 years of games being designed, and how people are learning inside games. And also tapping into what Wempy just now mentioned about learning the Quran. Um, while you're playing games or video games or mobile games, you learn how your brain is working. And actually, I figured out only 10 years ago that I am actually dyslexic, which is quite strange to discover at that old age. But I've always been trying to hide that. I thought I didn't know how my brain worked, but I'm learning now more and more, actually also via brain training games. And I managed to write a book with that handicap of being dyslexic, because I learned to make that a challenge and not just an obstacle. So I think there's much to gain in coming years, but also to look at recent years about inclusivity and how we can foster that.
And perhaps it's, I mean, one hand is, of course, can you create games which cater to a lot of different people, right? And the other factor, of course, is more technological, right? Is more the infrastructure, and that is something, of course, that is challenging, at least for some. Titik Pintar, my company, we are on Android phones, right? We can also do to iOS, but it's on smartphones. And smartphones, of course, a lot of people have smartphones, and it's increasing, so that's a good thing. But there's also data, right? Data packages, and that needs to be bought, the Pulsar. So there's also, and that is something that I am struggling with, and it would be great either with a big telecom provider, or perhaps some kind of government support. If there is no infrastructure to be able to have these modern technologies, then we still have a selection bias and only can offer the all these developments to a smaller group. And if we're able to educate them better, and some kids get left behind because they're unable to access this, then we are still dividing the population, let's say, in this case. And that is very difficult. For us, we're making our games as attractive as possible, but we do think about the devices. So our application can be installed on phones of 2-3 years old, mid-range phones, even entry-level phones, because of course not everybody will be able or would want to buy a very expensive phone, and there's other priorities, right? So that is something that I do believe is getting better. And actually in Indonesia, the cost of data is very low compared to other countries. So that is slowly but surely that is unlocking the potential of the whole nation. If there's no mobile phone network, if there's no data, then it's very, very difficult. We are also considering to partner up with other companies, for instance, that have kiosks, let's say, a point in a library or in a school where people can download content on, and if Titik Pintar would be included there, then kids could go to school with the device, or the parents, they could download the new content to play with, and then it would still be, they wouldn't have the cost of the data. So these are definitely things that are hard to solve, but worth trying to solve. So that is something that we're very eager to try to figure out.
Yeah. I think the whole COVID crisis right now has shown how completely how our social structures are completely way off and polarizing. And what I mean by that is that the extraordinarily wealthy are extraordinarily wealthy and safe, whereas the people of lower socioeconomic status are really lagging behind. And this has really impacted the education sector, where most children in Indonesia do not have access to their own device, where whether we're trying to advance gamification, trying to make it, democratize it, trying to make it accessible to everybody, the very fact is that not every child has an iPad or a laptop or a mobile phone that allows them to participate at a very basic level in any sort of gamified educational programs, which is a shame.
Yeah, that's true. And the device penetration is now upwards of 75% on the age group 25 to 35. So that is increasing. It's every year a few percentage higher. And of course, if you look at where the Gojeks are and the Grabs are, society is changing into a more connected way, and it's absolutely key that we get everybody on board. But unfortunately, that is very, very difficult for me right now to try to solve that. So that is something that we should definitely strive for, whether it's in public or the private sector. I think we are making good steps, and the government is investing in infrastructure, so that the Palaparing project and other things. So it is moving ahead, but of course, everybody would like to see this faster and more affordable and having a wider reach. That's unfortunately as fast as we can go, and hopefully we'll be able to have more inclusivity, whether it's through this specific the mobile phone. But like I said, if schools can be part of this, and if kids could use the devices to load the content there, that would already be something. Like you said, if children do not have a smartphone or a tablet or a laptop or anything, all of these devices, things become very, very hard. So that is something that the society should try to work on to improve this, to have more opportunities for these kids which need it the most.
But by definition, Robbert, by definition, when we use the word school, when we use the word education, right? In a traditional sense, we think of a building, school, learning, or a university. We think of things in a physical, from a physical perspective. But when we think of the word games, it's a lot more universal, isn't it? And so I think we all, in terms of us, or the gaming world being very pioneering, we need to be able to educate. We need to educate, the masses that education is universal. School is not just a place that you go to, you sit in front, 30 kids with a teacher at the front. It's not that anymore. You can learn everywhere. You can learn while you're walking down the street. You can learn while you're sitting at a cafe, at a restaurant. You can learn from anywhere, in a car, while you're driving somewhere, right? So education, school is not a place with a gate anymore, right? It's a part of life. It's a part of living. And so games and education in that sort of way needs to evolve. It's the gamification needs a public relations company, if you know what I mean, to really educate the masses on what it actually is and why it benefits the world.
Yeah, I agree. Indeed, it's playing isn't necessarily a waste of time, right? And that is something that is definitely is something that needs to be educated. And if for me, of course, I'm committed. If we're able to really show progress, if we're able to really educate, if we're able to help kids progress in any way, and we make it visible, we make this tangible, I think that's very, very important for the buy-in.
How do you measure that though? I mean, like we do have like a lot of hot topics here, right? So for example, like Fardil here asking about the inequalities, facilities, right? And then earlier there's also a question about some inclusivity, and I think kind of like Wempy also mentioned about there's a different needs from each of the children, right? Like how do you guys see, for example, like technology in this case, and how do we measure this? For example, like Robbert and Ellis, like how do you see, for example, Titik Pintar, your app, if it's successfully educate the children here in Indonesia, and Ellis, for example, like or based on your own experience, Wempy, how do you see as a success to really scale up, or like creating more Wempys, for example? Is this something that's we can see as a result and end product of like Robbert and Ellis, like we see a more little Wempys here in Indonesia, for example? Is this something that's can be measured? How do you guys see that?
Perhaps I could go first, and I mean it is very, very difficult to measure. First of all, what is the goal that you're trying to achieve? So how do you define this? How do you measure that, right? And then how do you compare that versus the kids that would not have played? And how do you measure that? And of course, kids they would learn outside of the class. They would learn inside of the class. So it is very difficult to measure this learning progress. That is something that we haven't really figured out. It's also something that the government, Nadine, the Minister of Education, the UG Nationale, the test at the end of the elementary grade has been abolished because it wasn't a good instrument to measure this. So that is something that makes, at least it gives some indication that it's not easy to figure out a good measurement tool. And then even if it would be a good measurement tool, it's once a year, right? And is that and then it's when you're at the end of the 6th grade. So it's a bit late if you want to help kids, if you want to teach them a little bit more, if you want to help them where they're struggling and push them where they're succeeding to go even further, right? This is just a dot on the horizon, and that's not frequent enough, and it doesn't help in actually improving the learning results of the children. So that is very difficult. You've got the PISA score that is done every 3 years, comparing all the kids in different countries when they're 15, what they've learned, what they're able to do with this knowledge. Unfortunately, Indonesia still has a lot of possibility to grow. 70 out of the 77 countries that take part So there is really a lot to be done. But also in this case, every 3 years to have this thermometer put in is not enough to increase this. So being able to measure the progress is something that is very, very important to us. We're just scratching the surface. We're still a young startup, but we'd love to be better at this and to understand better how kids are progressing, and if we can help them progress faster. And it's also indeed an indicator of our success as a company, right? If we want to make kids have fun while they learn something, how do we measure the learn something part, right? So that is something that is very, very interesting and not easy. And we're definitely pioneering in this field as well.
Yep. Thanks, Robert. So, Fadil, does that answer your some of your question? You can type text to the panelists and also maybe to Carlina directly for that.
I might just add to that, right? The greatest measure of success of anything that we pursue is engagement, really. Usually in a classroom, when a teacher asks a question or teaches something, there's always the person who, like Ellis, the intelligent person like Ellis, who always puts up their hand, right? 1, 2, or 3 kids who always put up their hand, right? And then the other people in the class, they're not engaged, they don't care, they're falling asleep, they're playing, they're sending notes to each other, playing game, doing other things, right? So that's engagement in a classroom, right? In a digital format, what's key also is engagement. But how do we democratize that? How do we multiply that engagement from like only 3 people being engaged to now 30 people being engaged? But then we can measure their level of engagement when we teach them, for example, about biology, right? We can start to be able to measure at what level are they engaged? Where are they really, what answers are they answering incorrectly? What are they answering correctly? Like, how are they deep diving into the particular questions? All these things where I don't understand. I cannot understand an economy that invests so much on infrastructure, on military, on fashion, on all these different things, but fails to invest in education. It's a complete failure of our society. I don't understand that, when the future of our world is highly dependent on how we educate our kids today, and not how we educate them, but how we engage them in that process of education. Because we don't need to solve the big problems of the world, or the pollution in the ocean, going into outer space, medical issues such as viruses that are just going to, kill us in the future. We need to engage people. We need to engage all these kids right now. And if they're not being engaged because they don't have access to technology, because they're not interested in what they're learning, they feel that there's no purpose in what they're learning, how can we expect them? Their education is our retirement plan. Just absorb that for a minute right now, right? Absorb what I'm saying by way of the fact that how we educate them is how we're going to retire. And if we don't educate them properly, we're going to have restless years when we get older.
That's very true. And I recently saw a book written about how do we become good ancestors for them to think ahead of for our next generations. And it's that's an interesting topic. I also read the question from Carilla asked about what are the elements of a well-designed learning game? And but it's also about what are the ingredients that we use in game design, and what are the ingredients we use in education, but also how do people take control. But I want to use an example of a game which is also described in my book, that there was a vacancy for a manager, and a guy 18 years old applied for that job. And then he applied for the job saying that I have this skill, I have this knowledge, I'm able to organize guilds because I played World of Warcraft for 5 years. I organized guilds, different disciplines. I arranged international events. I did this, I did this. So he could see what he learned in World of Warcraft, what was in the application, in the vacancy. He could recognize these skills and competencies. The company told him, like, it's impossible that you become a manager because you didn't do a management school yet. However, they were triggered by his capability of making that translation, what he learned inside the game in outside life. So they felt challenged, and he was actually the most successful youngest manager because he was able to translate that. However, I don't want to say World of Warcraft is a good management school or it's not the perfect management learning game, because you can learn that, but you can also learn just to battle inside World of Warcraft. So I think that a well-designed learning game taps into different learning types or preferred playing types. Like someone likes to battle, but then he plays in a game and he learns how to socialize and plan a meeting or strategize. So you have a path of learning that you learn things that are out of your comfort zone, but you are being invited in a very well-designed game to also do those things that you're normally not really familiar with. And for instance, Minecraft is also a very cool game because you can or just explore that world, or you build a world, or you start really building weird things, or you start to even become a little bit of a philosophy character in there. Everything is possible in Minecraft, depending how you want to explore that game or that world what you're into. Because now they also are evolving to more including economics, sorry, and social science is actually becoming a little bit of a part inside Minecraft. While me as an old person I still think Minecraft is like we used to play Lego, but it's much more to it, and it's evolving, that game. So it's very interesting how to see game worlds coming alive as educational environments and not just a game. Thank you for that question, Carlina.
Yeah, I think it's been really interesting, right? And to be honest, like what Wempy earlier mentioned, it really echoes my view as well. I mean, like as a parent, one of my worst nightmare is like thinking like, how am I going to leave my kids, right? And Ellis as well, the ancestral question, right? So which is why, right? Am I doing this right? I mean, like I may be very very lucky. I'm able to do all of this and this and this, but I don't know. Maybe my what about my children, right? Have we prepared them right? And so which is why as a parent we always try to find like this stimulus, like here some books, right? Or here games, or like really thankful with Robbert now. I don't have to fight with Angry Birds in the smartphone of my son, but like and like what Wempy earlier mentioned is that how to drive your children curiosity, right, by giving them purpose. But I think it really echoes like maybe not just me, but all of our expectation. Like I don't know what's the word you used earlier, Ellis, like how we prepare as an ancestor or something.
Yeah, that's indeed. It's a book or a conversation or something. I think it's a book, and there was a webinar around that topic as well. So
Yep.
how do we educate them? And
Yep,
actually, also Simon Sinek also has the same approach. How do we as older generation take care of the hipsters and the millennials to come on board in professional life. And it's very much about facilitating the dialogue and having negotiations about what do we need, what do they need, what do we need, and and actually I think many games are also a system to have a dialogue and negotiate on purpose.
Yep.
Can I just add to that and throw something out there, right, for all of us to think about right now? Okay, in a traditional sense, a teacher stands in front of a classroom and teaches 30 children something, right? That means that is one too many. So one person communicating to many children. So it goes one direction. That education goes one direction. Okay, so that's a traditional school sense. Now let's think about it from a YouTube standpoint also. Okay, YouTube is also still very much one to many. Okay, so for example, let's just say I'm an expert at fashion, right? And I teach everybody about fashion. So that's Wempy teaching 3,000 people who watched the YouTube video, or 30,000 or 3 million or 300 million people who watched me in that video, but it's still one person to many people communicating or teaching them, right? The great thing about gamification, can you imagine if all the YouTube content right now, right, became games? How awesome would that be? So for example, if I watch, like one of my favorite channels to watch on YouTube is just called Riddle. It's RIDDLE. And they just teach you a lot of amazing scientific facts about, pollution in the ocean, about Mars, about all these different things that I love to learn about, right? But imagine if I could engage in that on a daily basis, that there was a track, there was a journey, there was a game, imagine if there were virtual reality aspects to that, all these different things. I would absorb that education, that information so much more than just simply watching a video. Because everybody talks about right now, oh, video is the only way, like everything is video content, right? Video content is actually still the past. In 1970 it was video, 1980, 1990. Now it's all about virtual reality. It's about augmented reality. It's about games. It's about interaction. Because in that imagine if I just simply watched a 30-minute video, right? It would end at 30 minutes. But if I was able to engage with that video, which was originally 30 minutes, but it was a game, that content could be about 3 hours. And I would absorb so much more information. I would interact more with that. A lot more would be absorbed by somebody like myself. Whereas a video, I would just skip, or I would just like learn it from a one standpoint, and then it would end at 30 minutes. Whereas I would be able to engage a lot more deeply with that information, and that's what the future generation needs. It's not about the breadth of how much I can learn, but it's about the depth of how deep I can learn into that subject. How deep can I understand a virus? How deep can I understand engineering? How deep can I understand the world poverty, what's going on in Syria right now? How deep can I understand a political issue? That's what it's all about in the future. So it's not about trying to learn so much stuff. It's not about breadth at all. Education is not about breadth anymore. It's about depth. And that's what we need in the world. We need specialists so we can solve medical issues faster, so we can solve educational issues faster, engineering issues faster. It's all about depth, not breadth anymore. That's my take.
Yep. Thank you, Wempy. I think I just got a nudge from our host, Carlina here, that we actually have like 2 minutes left. Is there any last question? Oh, okay, hold on. We have a question from Indra Graduate. It's important to know how much time kids should spend on a certain device or working on a fairly simple activity. How much time do you think appropriate for kids to spend learning on educational application or games, while we are talking about educational technology will be very good. Okay, is there any like
Anybody want to answer this?
yeah,
Do I see somebody that
how
wants
many
to answer this?
I'm waving. I'm waving. Yes. Yes, this question is indeed very important. The funny thing is, we don't even know ourselves now during Corona how to take care of ourselves sitting behind the screen. It's not an easy thing to balance health and life being behind the screen. And the same thing is for children, that if they get overly engaged and you try to talk to them and tell them like, come here, we have dinner as a family, and the child does not respond, then it's very important to limit and make sure that they don't lose their mind and head inside a game or inside their learning, because sometimes they get in a flow and they do need to focus, but we do need to have a bodily, or our body needs to move around. We need to walk around. We need to interact with people in real life. We also need to separate digital life from real life. And it's very important to have this conversation and the dialogue with your children. How much do you think is healthy? And they can also tell us, parents and older people, like, how much do you think is healthy? Because we are also not giving them a good example. We are yelling at them that they need to come for dinner, but then also parents are also using their mobile device. So we need new ethics, or what's the word? Etiquette using our mobile devices, and we need to explore that and stay healthy. And it's very important to really experiment with that. Limit our time or not limit our time, but just have experiments in certain times, like what is good for us. Please take care of each other and ourselves, because this 1.5 hours is also quite long to be sitting down behind the screen with headsets on. We need to walk outside and get fresh air. That's it.
Yeah. Can I just add also that some parents say they never give their children devices until they become older, for example, when they're 15 or 16, whatever. But I feel that that's actually very foolish. Children need to get devices from a very young age, so they are technologically attuned. That is a definite must for their future. It's just about, and we need to get out of the fact that, okay, school is for 8 hours and all these different things, because the world has changed, that we really need to reevaluate school hours, lessons, all these different things, right? But also when it comes to what is the appropriate amount of time that kids should be using a device? Well, the amount of time that kids should be using a device, right, really just depends on not only like parental, like, oh, you're only allowed to be on this device for 2 hours or so per day, right? But you should be able to customize that and understand that your child has a particular interest in this particular area, and that sometimes that does require, that when they're really immersed in a particular subject, don't distract them, allow them to continue. But then thereafter, it's a matter of, you need to customize. What's good for Wempy is not good for Ellis, is not good for Rizki, is not good for Robbert. And so you just have to be able to customize all of that. But it's a matter of understanding and customizing your child's needs into a world that is fast evolving and changing, and could leave your child behind at any sort of stage and phase.
Thank you, Wempy and Ellis. And for me, I think, so modesty is a virtue, right? So of course, we hope to help kids and to have fun and to learn something on our app. If this would be 8 hours per day, I think that's a bit much, right? Is it 6 hours per day? That's still a bit much. For me, the quality of the time on a device, what you're actually doing. I mean, you can get lost in algorithms of Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, right? You can lose an hour, you can lose 2 hours, you can lose a whole day if you just don't pause or don't stop, right? So for me, it's if a kid is really engaging, whether it's on Titik Pintar or doing something else educational, that is really building some kind of skills or competencies, of course, there should be limits. For me, if it's 1 hour that a kid is playing with Titik Pintar, that would be fantastic. Perhaps the day after, go play outside with kids. The day after that, perhaps play another half hour or play an hour. We make our lessons, we make them quite short, 7 to max 10 minutes, with the questions and the games and the multiplayer and the single player and everything behind it. It's 15 to 20 minutes that a session average takes. So if a kid plays 2 or 3 times on a day, that would be fantastic and would definitely help. Again, there are limits. So try to, as a parent, you'll have to try to balance that and figure out what works well for you and what works well for you.
And remember also that human progress is not based on academic intelligence only. It's not just IQ, but it is also EQ, emotional intelligence. And a lot of emotional intelligence is picked up through social interactions, but can also be picked up through digital interactions. So you've got to be able to balance and customize your child's educational needs across their IQ requirements as well as their EQ requirements.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. I think it's really cool. Unfortunately, our time is up. So let me call Carlina first. Carlina, maybe you can. I think she has some closing remark. Yeah.
Hello. Yes.
Hello.
Hi. Hello. I'm here again. So thank you. This is very interesting discussion that has been shared by the expertise by Robbert, Ellis, and Wempy, and also a good new knowledge that have been shared, and also a very good question that have been asked by the moderator with my Rizki. Thank you very much, and also from the audience, from Luciana, Fardil, Ipan, Christina, and Indra. So I think today discussion is useful for increasing our knowledge about education, gamification, and also technology. So I think now it's close to breakfasting time for everybody. So enjoy your breakfasting and thank you and see you again soon.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.